of you, and a very warm welcome to all who have joined us for this session. You've been very patient. My name is Rashmi Pimple. I'm the CEO of RICH, Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. The topic for this panel discussion today is Women Entrepreneurship as the Next Frontier for Employment. I have with me a set of experts whom we will discuss with today. I have I have Purnima Shenoy and Supriya Panchangam, who are the co-authors of the book that we just released. Congratulations to both of you on the launch of the book. We have Madhura Dasgupta Sinha, who is the CEO and founder for Aspire for Her, and we have Sameer Sathe, who is the Executive Vice President of Vadhwani Foundation. I would now like to request each of the panel members to introduce themselves and their organizations and give a short perspective on this topic. I think I'll start with Purnima.
Thank you, Rashmi. It's so nice to see such a patient audience. We will keep it short and sweet. So I have been an entrepreneur several times over. I've done 3 startups, and some I've exited with honor, and some I've just exited with this, skin of my teeth. Okay, and as everyone knows, these are several issues. I think especially funding is a big issue for women, and I'm so glad it was touched today. While accelerating and working with startups, you realize that the needs of women as entrepreneurs or women-owned enterprises are very distinctly different from that of men. I've been a woman who has raised money. I worked with women who are entrepreneurs and felt that there was a need definitely to address this gap. And that's how Supriya and I got together and said, how can we work together, create a book that can be a handbook to guide accelerating women's businesses. This is the first book of its kind in the country. We did a lot of research. I'm very proud of the research that we have done. It is authentic data, not copied from anywhere, and it is the first one of its kind. I hope that the accelerators will use it as a guidebook going forward. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, my name is Supriya Panchangam. I'm the co-author of the book that we released today, like she mentioned. Over the last 5 to 6 years, I've primarily worked with entrepreneurs, helping them in their 0 to 1 stage, which is idea to execution stage. We've touched upon very relevant topics today, and I think we're going to talk about it a little more. Very, very happy to be on this panel today, especially with Purnima, Madhura, both incredible women leaders, both incredible women entrepreneurs, and Sameer, who has been an incredible supporter of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people like me. I'm looking forward for this conversation. Thank you for bringing up the topic, Rashmi. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Madhura Dasgupta Sinha, founder and CEO of Aspire for Her. I've been a banker for 25 years, and I was looking at gender data emanating from India, and I realized in terms of economic participation of women, India is 6th from the bottom in a list of 156 countries. This is as per the Global Gender Gap Index. The problem was not as bad all this while. For the last 15 years, there's actually been a sharply declining participation of women in the workforce. I got a little depressed when I saw this data. I thought someone needs to do something about this problem. I thought that someone could be me. That's how Aspire for Her was born. Thank you.
Hi, this is Sameer. Just a quick intro. I have 30 years of experience in research and strategy consulting, and now I'm with Vadhwani Foundation doing the incredible cause of employment, right? So which is a very important, mighty important issue for not only India but across the world. I think subject on women empowerment, women equity, these are all very buzzwords nowadays and everyone is talking about it, has been my area of deep interest right from the beginning. Even in masters, which I did that in psychodynamic principles that drive the entrepreneurs, and my subject was elected women representatives in India. And when this book topic came up and Purnima and Supriya talked about it, it was fascinating because I got interested in this topic instantly, and I found a lot of the things that we discussed resonated quite well amongst ourselves. And therefore, not only in terms of the thought process and what requires to be done to make sure that we don't think of this subject as something which is different or something which is unique in years and decades to come, I'll make sure that I'll continue to collaborate with the authors and the greater audience in a much more meaningful way than just sitting here on the dais and talking about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you. Our panel members have either been entrepreneurs themselves or have seen entrepreneurship from close quarters. So I would like to pose my first question to Supriya as to what made her select the topic of this book that we launched today.
I think what we write about in the book, like MSR rightly mentioned when we were launching the book, it's a great culmination of, for me personally, it's been a great culmination of the kind of experiences that I've had in the last 1.5 decades, right? There is design, there's empathy, there is being able to build communities, there's like how do you manage operations, logistics, how do you figure out what kind of entrepreneurs to hire to select for your accelerator. I think the book covers many aspects which we inherently sort of take for granted, right? So how do you sort of find those specific points and how do you bring that to the fore? The book focuses on that. It was a very easy choice. I don't think it was a very difficult choice to make. That and obviously Purnima has been a great co-author. And to say that would be the least. She's been so much more. She's been such a great supporter. Also, I think the sort of overlap of the experience that Purnima and I bring to the table, our ability to articulate, our sort of ability to look back and look at what are our professional competencies, what are our biases, what has worked, what's not worked. And like she mentioned, a lot of research, reaching out to people that we've worked with closely and deriving insights from their direct experiences, right? We thought that it would be a very, very relevant thing to talk about in today's world, and especially in India, women accelerators and incubators are just everywhere, right? And like a lady mentioned in one of the Q&As, how do we get to know? How do we know which network to work, interact with and things like that? I think there are a lot of solves for that in the book, and it was easy for us to just arrive at it. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think all of us are very excited to see what's in store for us in the book, and I'm sure it will have a lot of insights for all the budding entrepreneurs and whoever is on the entrepreneurship journey. So while we are on the topic of the book, Samir, I would like to come to you and to ask you that you have a short piece in the book wherein you've mentioned, wherein you've talked about community-based execution or socialist approaches or capitalist approaches. So could you throw some light for our audience on what you wanted to say about it?
Sure. So I think if you read the book, and when I was talking about this to Supriya and Purnima, there are three things that really stood out for me. The first is really, one of the things that we ought to do is really to think about community, because I think we spoke and we heard earlier that what we have found, at least what I have found in my research, and even science proves it, is that woman is able to connect and bond and relate and collaborate better in generally all walks of life, and particularly in entrepreneurship. In my experience, what I have found is that when one is thinking about a male entrepreneur, he connects mainly to serve the purpose, and then there is no reason left for that person to connect any longer. But that doesn't happen with women. When a woman connects, definitely the purpose is served, but then the relationship continues. And that I found very interesting. And when one studies the subject of entrepreneurship and what happens in community, it was clear to me that if you are able to design the programs which are community based and therefore solve a problem in a society which not only benefits a particular individual or particular entity or particular segment but the entire community, then we have a great chance to make an impact at the systemic level. Because a lot of the entrepreneurs and a lot of the women entrepreneurs are not able to scale it up. Of course, many entrepreneurs are not able to scale it up, including male and female, but I found the difference pretty stark when it comes to female entrepreneurs. So any problem which is community problem, and if you are able to design problems which are you are able to design programs which are going to address the problem at the community level, I believe that they can really change the face of the scale and the systemic impact. So that's one. Secondly, I have talked about a socialist approach and the capitalist approach. And I think that's where the difference between gender equality and gender equity comes into picture. Gender equity is mighty important. And I think the way to think about this is that now the reason that we are meeting today, Women's Day, and we are all celebrating all this, is because we believe that a woman needs to be given a fair treatment, right, in quotes. But I think it's more important to look at gender equity when we are basically making sure that the situation, the context, the capabilities, the skills and resources that are made available to a woman are made adequate, and then it should be left to merit, right? And that is very important when we think about this problem as a social problem, but the way to solve this problem is through a capitalist lens, in terms of reward the meritocracy, but make sure that there are resources and level playing field for everybody, males or females. So that's the second. And the third thing that I've talked about in the book is about access to, again, the mentors, the coaches and the experts, etc., which is very, very important, because it's not only about a woman entrepreneur, but even a male entrepreneur. I have found that if one is able to adapt, one is able to navigate, one is able to pivot, somebody mentioned that right earlier, then one has better chances to become successful. So I think these are the three things that I've kind of tried to summarize, but happy to talk otherwise elsewhere.
Purnima, I'm guessing a lot of the insights in the book would have come from your own personal experience. So, do you think that women need special treatment when it comes to entrepreneurship? And if yes, why would you say so?
Okay, I'm the original one who's opposed the word woman entrepreneur, but now I have come to accept it because it is a distinct phrase. But I think women as entrepreneurs need more of a level playing field, especially in terms of raising money and in terms of funding. I mean, there was data spoken about earlier, and this is very true. Women find it exceedingly difficult to raise money. One thing is, with no offense to anybody, there's a lot of old boys networks, and women are not a part of it. So going and asking money from strangers is difficult for women. We are culturally brought up saying, don't ask for money, don't speak about money. And I think that's something we need to break about. So nowadays, when I talk to customers, and I work with a lot of companies, I'm talking about money in the first meeting itself. Why should we hesitate to ask for money when we give damn good service and work so hard for it? So I think the differential treatment women need is help them to talk about money. And I'm saying this from every platform. Let's talk about funding, let's talk about financing. You'll be surprised how many women have their husband, father, brother manage the finances. But they're not managing the finances of the business they're slogging so hard for. So I think from that perspective, women need to be made to be more aware of it. Thank you.
True. I think on a personal level, I would agree with you, because it's not about giving special treatment to women, but it's about understanding the need of a special group of people, be it women or men, and then do the interventions accordingly. Madhur, I'll come to you now. Aspire for Her has a very special focus on entrepreneuries, which is a very beautiful and a unique term. Can you tell us more about that initiative?
So at Aspire for Her, we have the vision to add more than 1 million women to the workforce by 2025 and 10 million by 2030. And we do this by using the power of communities and networks. So we work with a bunch of communities, and one of the communities that we have built over the last 6 months is Entrepreneurship. This is meant for women entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And I have often thought of because we are a COVID baby, okay, we're not yet 2 years old. Tomorrow we're going to turn 2, okay, and we have built about the community size is about 120,000 now, and the entrepreneurial community size just crossed 10,000 a few days back. We're now today about 12,000. So we use a lot of innovative means, I would say, to actually build the community, but it's all been online, right? We look at mentors and role models, we look at learning opportunities, we look at career previews, we look at a fantastic peer community where people support each other, cheerlead for each other, etc. And we want every woman in India to be in what we call the 3E, which is either entrepreneurship, employment, or education, which leads to one of these two. Entrepreneurship as a community, we try to use all of these 5 elements. And we try to ensure that whether it is somebody like Falguni Nayak, who comes and talks to us, to our members, to just motivate them, inspire them, or it's that little Madhubani painter who is trying to just get a business model in place and is speaking to one of our mentors and is actually finding the way, we managed to do it. So we try to democratize entrepreneurship, we try to make entrepreneurship aspirational for women. But if you were to really ask me in one word, I saw all of you here today with your fantastic stories, and I feel that entrepreneurship should be just a bigger version of T-Hub. It's just amazing. The amazing energy that I saw with all of you here, I just felt that if I can drive something like a T-Hub, if I can build something like this ecosystem, then entrepreneurship will be successful. So thank you for giving me this space, and thank you for letting me share my dreams about entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhur. I'm sure you will definitely achieve this dream. Supriya, I'll come back to you again. You have interacted with several entrepreneurs. So did you ever notice any difference between how men and women approach entrepreneurship?
We've spoken a lot about, I think we've spoken a lot about it in the last couple of panels as well. Yes and no. I think in the previous panel they spoke about, I think cultural upbringing and the kind of societal systemic challenges people go through make them different kind of entrepreneurs. It is not, one of the things that we advocate for in the book, we're not saying women need special treatment, we're saying they need differentiated treatment, and the difference there is to say that the systemic and the cultural barriers, internal barriers, somebody spoke about that as well, right? The barriers are different for men and women as entrepreneurs, and therefore their approach to entrepreneurship is different, right? Because the barriers are different, the approach also needs, the way that we work with them also needs to be different. So in that way, yes, men and women approach entrepreneurship differently. And no, because every entrepreneur has their own challenges, right? And it really is personal to each one of them. Successful entrepreneurs talk about how hard the journey has been. Struggling entrepreneurs talk about how hard the journey is. So I don't think there is
True, and I think there are a lot of common things that are so gender agnostic that
Absolutely.
you really cannot differentiate.
And both have their own strengths in terms of leadership, in terms of innovation, in terms of ability to problem solve and take risks. So I think,
True. Purnima, you have been an entrepreneur yourself. What did you see as some of the biggest challenges while you were on this journey?
I think the biggest thing that an entrepreneur needs, what I felt, is trust. Okay, when you hire your first core team, people are joining the company because of you. Okay, and you have to remember that you have to pay their salaries every month. Okay, this is not something that you can delegate. So they are joining the company trusting you. When you're going to customers, and you are a new entrepreneur and it's a new business, they're doing business with you, trusting you again. So it underlines the word trust, whether it is the employees or whether it's your customers or anybody in the ecosystem. So I would say, the most important thing as an entrepreneur is establish that trust early enough, then you can build on it. If you fail in that one aspect, it is shaky ground after that.
Very true. Samir, my next question is to you. What role do you think men can play in this whole journey? Some of our panelists, some of our...
I know. Very good question, and of course it's a very important topic because I just want to connect this answer to one of the earlier points is that research is very clear that the way woman sees her own identity has got tremendous implications on how men see women's identity, and we alluded to that in one of the earlier panels when we talked about it. So firstly, I would say the men have to I would say 2-3 things. The first is at the adolescent age, all these perspectives, all these things are shaped up. That's a very important age. So one of the things that needs tremendous intervention is how we can shape the attitudes towards the gender between each other in adolescence. That's very important. It has tremendous implications. In fact, I'm one of the board of advisor members at a startup called Wulu. And I was just mentioning to MSR earlier, and they talk about how to shape the adolescent attitudes which will have implications on the gender roles that men and women play later in their lives. So I think we need to look at catching that phase because the mind is most influential at that point of time. So that's number one. Second, when it comes to adults, of course, I think is what is required is that I see for the next 10, 20, 30 years, these kinds of fora, these kinds of occasions are incredibly important because they create the visibility of why this cause is important. Right? So in the short term, that's going to be very, very important to be able to do that consistently and relentlessly. And that would need an involvement of men as equal to involvement of women, right? So I would imagine a forum or a platform which has 50% representation of men and women, whether it is a women's cause or a men's cause. So that's going to be very important. So through structure, one can change the way things happen, right? And I think the third thing is about making sure that we need to actually create successful stories and role models because that's a demonstration effect. And then I think for the next third generation, fourth generation from now, when they look at the successful role models, things will change. So it's both in thought and action. I think these are the three things how men can make a difference. And I think that's something that needs to be brought to their consciousness first, and then of course acted upon.
Very rightly put, Samir. Sure.
I read a very, very interesting post on LinkedIn a couple of days before where they said, ask men around you, how are they specifically supporting you? Right? And I want to shout out to Harappa, who is also one of our supporters in this journey. It's a very assumed idea that, my husband's very supportive of my journey and my manager is very supportive of my career and etc. But take a moment and ask them, how are you specifically supporting me, right? And it's a great start point for both men and women to understand what kind of support you can seek, and for men what kind of support they can provide.
Very true. I mean, something that is tangible and not just a tokenism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think Samir, you very rightly pointed out that something like this starts very early on. If you see that in your house, if you see how your mother and father are dividing chores, how they're dividing duties, you will grow up to, be like them. You will actually learn it while seeing them. Madhura, my last question to you is, how do we keep on the momentum of getting more and more women to entrepreneurship, building a pipeline of women entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
I think more than entrepreneurship, we need to ensure that the more women in the workforce, there need to be more women participating in the economy. And on your question on men, that has also a lot to do with role models. You know, some time back we saw a Cadbury ad, a remaking of a Cadbury ad, where a guy called Prabneet Singh actually cheered for the woman, right? How many of you have seen this ad, right? Everybody's seen this ad, right? And, you know, men unfortunately don't have much of a choice, because nobody really tells them what to do to be supportive, right? And that's why we need to tell the stories of those men who are supportive. And you know, I will embarrass this one person sitting in the audience right here, because we are actually going to run a story on him just a few days down the line. You know, he is in the audience. He actually supports a community of women so strongly. It's called She Dares, and the person is Chandra Balani, about whom we are going to write about shortly. So he's trekked all the way here to meet us. This is a community supported by Amazon Web Services, which we very closely work with them. But, you know, I think it's examples and stories that really make all the difference, you know. It's not about theory, it's not about doing, you know, all fancy things about 5-point models and all of that. It is just those stories. So whether it is, and we want to tell those stories. Those stories will be the nudges and triggers of tomorrow. So, you know, whether it is Amitabh Bachchan, who we also found him to be a very unlikely supporter to our cause, because his granddaughter actually supports entrepreneurship in a big way, and on the 1000th episode of KBC he decided to talk about entrepreneurship, and we found that very cool, and we said, hey, let's use this, because we are shameless. We want every way to ensure that more women get impressed by the concept of entrepreneurship and they actually take more risk. So, as I said, we take all chances, we try to be as creative as possible, we try to find these stories from real life, from people sitting around us, and that's what we try to do to increase the pipeline. Thank you.
Stories are something that resonate with each one of us. I would have loved to talk to you for more than an hour after this, but I think in the interest of time, I will stop here and I'll ask Priyanka if we have some time for the questions from the audience. Maybe a couple of questions. Would request the member of the audience to direct it directly to a panelist so that we get a quick response.
Good evening. It's been really interesting listening to each one of you, though I came in a little later. Purnima, I've seen you in different avatars earlier, and now moving into this space of writing a book, especially on women entrepreneurs to inspire, innovate, and ignite, as the theme says. And I loved listening to Madhura, Samir, and Supriya, I have to say that. So Purnima, my question is, as you straddle different roles, and then you've taken up the journey much later, because that's another thing. I think the stigma is, at what age can you become an entrepreneur? Can you be an entrepreneur at a very prime age or whatever? Because you can experiment, you can fail, it's safe to fail. So I've seen you, I've known you, so I want others also to listen how age shouldn't be a barrier when you choose, for women especially, to choose the entrepreneurial path.
Thanks, good question. I became an entrepreneur for the first time at 25 and worked very hard to look 30 because I wanted to be taken seriously. I'm still trying to look 30. Okay? Okay, but I don't think, typically if you see data and from experiences, women become entrepreneurs later in life. Okay, it's like in a way when you have finished a particular part of settling down your personal life that you start wanting to take more risk. I don't think age is all in the mind. It's only in India we are so obsessed about age. If you look at it, let's say US, and you look at Bay Area, and you look at Silicon Valley, which is the hub of entrepreneurship, people are raising money in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Why are we so bound by age? These are barriers that we are creating for ourselves. Forget about age. If you have the energy and the enthusiasm, then you should go forward. But energy is the most important thing. That's my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the panelists, and thank you audience for being so patient. Hope you've enjoyed the session.